Welcome to the Speaker Spotlight Series for CX Week Canada. Service design, design thinking, and user research. Three things Jade Salazaar is in charge of at Rogers Communications, Canada's largest telecommunications company and one of its largest media and publishing companies as well. So what does that mean exactly? Service design is concerned with optimizing the customer journey map to create a great service experience. Meanwhile, design thinking is a human-centered framework for doing this work. You don't make any assumptions about your user. Instead, you observe them, gather facts about them, and use those insights to refine your strategy. So Jade is actually here with me today to talk about the journey at Rogers towards service design, why it helps them get closer to their customer, and what business problems it solves. So Jade, tell me about your role in design thinking.
The design thinking practice for the last 2.5 years here at Rogers, and I've been responsible essentially for bringing cross-functional teams together and helping to guide them using the design thinking framework. And no two sessions or no two workshops are the same, but we do try to sort of come together and come up with things like journey design, concepts, prototypes, opportunities for research, planning roadmaps, and then outside of just actual project work, there's also been a big element and appetite for training and scaling. So we're also accountable for that. And recently, I've taken on a new role, and still in the same space, and I'll be trying to stand up for service design at Rogers. Mm-hmm. And I think there's going to be lots of opportunity to develop and to continue to evolve and sort of working on institutionalizing that practice as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. And everyone has a different way of explaining what design thinking is because it's sort of this nebulous concept at the moment. So can you tell me in your own words what design thinking is to you?
Yeah, so in its simplest form, I think design thinking is essentially it's an approach to problem solving. That's really all it is. And depending on, what it is you're trying to solve, it could be in something in your personal life, it could be at the enterprise level. You can kind of pull from some of the framework to help you with an approach to solving your problem.
Definitely. And could you also differentiate between what is design thinking and service design for our listeners who may not be as familiar with these terms?
I think design thinking is, like I said, it's sort of a mindset or an approach to solving your problem or to, working through a project, for example, to deliver experiences. So it is kind of that mindset and it's a framework. So when you orient yourself within a specific stage in design thinking, if you're in the empathy stage, okay, well, what is it that you could do when you're trying to understand your users and you're trying to understand your space, you're trying to figure out how people do things today. Mm-hmm. You could be in the ideation phase and it's sort of all about, okay, well, let's go and do some maybe sort of content mapping exercises and doing some sort of rapid ideation or rapid prototyping. So design thinking, it's more about kind of pulling from some of those activities and that approach, where service design sort of wraps its arms around the whole experience. So I guess by that I mean, you have the journey, right? You've got the kind of customer experience, customer journey at the top, that front of house experience. But then you also have all of the back of house pieces. So everything that you actually need to enable, be it process, people, culture, technology, all of the sort of quote unquote capabilities that need to work together to enable that front of house customer experience. So that to me is what service design is. Service design is wrapping its arms around the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And design thinking is just one of the tools and one of the ways to approach doing that body of work.
Okay. So basically service design is a way of critically iterating and evaluating and redesigning the customer journey.
Yeah, I think you could say that way for sure. And I think it's more of a blueprint of, yes, upfront, what the customer journey could look like, and how is it going to actually get done? What do we need to do to enable that experience as an organization?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, as you said, you are building the design thinking practice at Rogers from scratch. Can you talk me through how you did this? And also, how does design thinking help you make sure that the customer is always at the center of everything you do?
I have been at Rogers for quite some time. I've been there for about 8.5 years. And before I moved into design thinking, I was a digital product owner. And so for me in that role, it was very challenging to figure out, how do we evolve our digital platforms and our experience in such a way that actually makes sure the customer is at the center of what we're trying to do. So I would partner with our experience design team, and we just started to work in this new way. At least it was new for us. And we practiced design thinking without ever calling it that. So we started to do things like digging out data that was relevant to the customer experience. We brought cross-functional teams together to, co-ideate, co-create. We actually got in front of our customers and our frontline agents actually all over the country from coast to coast. We did focus groups, crowdsource, all of that stuff to help us define our opportunities and then basically design based on everything we uncovered. Then we went back and we validated our designs with more users. And for me, after that experience, I just realized there was no other way to work. And so then I started approaching everything in the same way. And, before too long, I was actually being asked to then help other program owners and product owners through their work and their approach. And it really was in no time, the appetite was there, and then we started to really practice this in digital. And we would bring, digital PO designers and technology together to do the co-creation and co-ideation. And once it started to take off within digital, because that is, where the practice was born at Rogers, we started to include your other groups cross-functionally to help them approach the problems using design thinking. Because, if you haven't been working in this way and using this approach and something has hit digital, it's already too late, right? So in parallel to kind of, doing actual project work, just diving in there, we started to run Design Thinking 101 workshops and to introducing the framework to really anybody across the company that was interested. And it got people thinking about, how they could apply the principles in their areas of the organization as well. And, I wouldn't say that it is systematic just yet at the company. I have seen teams throughout the organization and people actually at all levels, from C-suite to coordinators and analysts, using pieces of it and actually changing their approach. And, design thinking starts with empathy. So it starts with a deep understanding of the user and, what they see, what they need, value, what are their pain points, how they accomplish things today. Then, you start to define your opportunities based on everything you know about the user. And this all happens before ideas and solutions are thrown around. So, that's sort of how design thinking keeps the user top of mind. And embedded in design thinking is also prototyping and testing and iterating, all of which lends itself to improving the end user experience based on direct feedback from the user. So it's pretty much baked into the framework.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how you said that once you discovered this way of working, you realized there was no other way to work and you couldn't revert back to the old methods. What were some of the discoveries you made about your users or ways of doing business from implementing design thinking?
Yeah, I think in terms of ways of doing business, what I discovered when we brought sort of people together was that everybody really does, at least for the most part, the majority of the teams, they really do want to do right by the customers. Really we are in the business of making our customers happy and retaining our customers. It's just that there were so many things outside of the control of individuals that needed to shift as well. So it could have been the way we govern our projects, could have been the way that we look to allocate capital. It could have been the way that we review our work. Various things that we have in place for so many years hadn't been looked at, right? And you hadn't really had the customer in the room. So I think that was one of the key discoveries, was that, you know what, the intent is there and the appetite is there on the ground. It's just, how do we now sort of, move the big ship, turn the big ship around when you're kind of starting with a little tank engine.
Definitely, and you make a really good case for why design thinking is important to any organization, which kind of ties into my next question. Every new employee at Rogers is initiated in design thinking starting from the day that they're onboarded. So why is this an important part of making design thinking a systematic way of doing business in the organization?
It's really important because, when you onboard at Rogers, and it is a, 2 to 3 day engagement, there's so much to learn about the company, and there's so much to learn about our history and our, all of our roots in Canada and how we've evolved over time. And, for us to actually allot a chunk of those 3 days to specifically design thinking in the framework and how we're using it at Rogers, it's really important because it showcases our commitment to taking a customer-first approach and actually fostering innovation and collaboration amongst our teams. So for that to be one of the first things that new employees learn at Rogers, I think is it's a big sort of testament to the fact that we are standing behind working in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned that, or you've said previously that one of the biggest challenges in your role was trying to turn a list of product requirements into a best-in-class digital experience. So in that sense, what is your process of going from ideation to concept to execution with design thinking?
Yeah, well, to be honest, we just kind of follow the framework, and there are different flavors of it, I guess, that exist in the wild. Some have 5 steps, some have more of a loop. Companies are adopting and adapting and merging steps together. I don't think there's sort of a, one specific piece to rally around, but we really do. We just kind of follow the essence of the framework, and before we start the solution, we make sure we come together to understand as much as we can about the problem space. Then we define our opportunities and we do our ideation based on those opportunities. We distill all of the ideas down to sort of themes and trends that we're seeing, and we prioritize and do deeper dives on whatever our highest value trends and concepts are. And once we spend a little bit more time on evolving certain concepts, we just decide collectively on next steps. And I get asked a lot, well, what comes out of a discovery session or a design thinking workshop? And it really depends based on what the needs are of the room, of the project, of the customers. So, next step could be anything from deciding that, okay, we have what we need to go away and create prototypes, or to put together journey maps, or to start looking at business benefits. And when it comes to execution, I'd say we're still trying to become efficient in our delivery. It does take a lot of organization and alignment and prioritization, socialization and investment, planning, of course, and execute on some of these bigger bet capabilities and ideas that come out of some of the workshops. So, upfront socialization, I think, of the intent of a body of work and identifying impacted teams right away will be sort of key to this implementation stage going forward.
Okay. Yeah, and just to add on that, I have a bit of a chicken and egg question just out of curiosity. Do you start by identifying a business problem and applying design thinking to it, or do you use design thinking to identify business problems ahead of time?
Yeah, that is an interesting question, and it comes to us in both ways. So, occasionally new business will come with a specific goal that they might have in mind, or they might come to us and say, how can we change the way that we're doing something today, or can you help us evolve, X, Y, or Z, and a little bit more of a general ask. So, I would say as we scale our practice, there will be a lot more opportunity to kind of use design thinking up front and sort of identify areas of the business that we can stand up teams and programs and initiatives around, for sure. But right now, I'd say, generally the business is coming to us with what they think is their opportunity to solve for, and then we kind of work with them from there.
Okay. Yeah, and as you've sort of described already, service design is definitely not a set it and forget it process. It needs constant iteration. So what are some key metrics you track specifically for the service design function to determine, is this a success? Is it not? Should we change the whole thing? What should be the next steps?
Mm-hmm. Our objective is to deliver a seamless end-to-end experience across our channels, while, of course, taking costs out of the business. So for us, some important metrics that we use are our LTR, of course. Is it going up? Decreasing calls into our call centers, increasing our conversion. There's customer lifetime value now, which we're focusing on a lot more, and cost to serve. I think there will be opportunity to look at effectiveness internally as well. Mm-hmm. So, working in this way, is it increasing our ability to go to market more quickly, and what could it be doing for our employee engagement? So I think those are things for us to look at in the future.
Yeah, and it really intrigued me when I found out that, Rogers is so heavily invested in design thinking and service design because, as you know, the telecommunications industry is usually monopolistic, where there's just a few players, and so there's little incentive for differentiation through the customer experience or through innovation. So can you explain a little bit about why, from a business perspective, it makes sense for Rogers to use design thinking and service design?
Yeah, well, we actually truly believe that the way to differentiate is actually to build out the best-in-class customer experiences. And if we are good to our customers when they onboard with us, and then, does not stop there, but throughout the entire life cycle, then we believe that they'll continue to stay with us. So we actually do think that differentiating and providing excellent customer experiences and service will be the way to win in this space.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, Jade, can you give me a quick sneak peek of what you'll be discussing at CX Week Canada in September?
Yeah, so I'll be talking specifically about scaling design thinking at the enterprise level. And amongst some other things, you can expect to hear about our service design principles, our innovation champions, and our roadshows.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jade. It's been a pleasure, and we can't wait to see you at CX Week Canada from September 23 to 25 in Toronto.